Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Bang on Sales Show. I'm your host, Mark Bangs, and today my guest is Rod Baptista. So, a little bit about Rod. So, Rod is a consummate salesperson and likes to think of himself as a professional SDR. Are you still an SDR now? I think you're
Yes, I'm a senior SDR, correct.
Oh, okay. Should have asked you that first. Despite Rod's non-traditional background, Rod employed a natural charisma and storytelling to convince his first employer to give him a shot. And that turned out to be a good decision, I believe. So through sheer hard work and curiosity, Rod was then promoted 4 times in 3 years to sales manager at a company called Vorsight. And he was recently one of the fastest SDR to AE promotions at ZoomInfo. Rod's constantly iterating, staying up to date with the most engaging ways to cut through the noise. And his favorite sales books are psychology books. Man, I love all of that. That's brilliant. Listen, Rod, thank you for coming on. How you doing today?
I am doing well. How are you, Mark?
I'm good. Yeah. And I'm glad, like, I've got another superstar on the show, so that's brilliant. It's quite an intro. Yeah. So, okay, so today we're going to be talking predominantly about prospecting, some other areas, but yeah, omni-channel hunting is one of the phrases we've been throwing around. So yeah, I guess over to you, Rod. Do you want to open the topic up and then we can dig a bit deeper?
Sure. So, I guess 2 things. One, prospecting is a funny word because it means different things for different people. I've worked at companies where prospecting meant this is the block of time during which you're going to make no calls, send no emails, and find people, add them to your list, find research, identify good fit accounts, right? That's what prospecting meant to them. And I've worked at other companies where prospecting meant now's the time that you make calls, right? So even within, and we're just talking about prospecting here, there's so much ambiguity within some of these definitions. Largely, I tend to think of prospecting in the first camp of, you know, how do I find the information that I need so that I can then call, email, send LinkedIn touches, send text messages, that kind of outreach. I try to bucket my categories into research and acting on the research, right? That's prospecting. And then as that relates to omni-channel hunting, it's more important today than ever to be able to be present everywhere that your prospects are. And it's so interesting because it really relates to their persona a lot of times, where salespeople are very active on LinkedIn. Marketing people are very active on LinkedIn. Does that make it a more viable channel for you to use, or a less viable channel because they're getting more noise, right? Same thing with if you're working with prospects in the oil and gas industry, right? This is an industry that's not always super technically savvy. These guys might not be checking. They're for sure, they probably don't have a LinkedIn, and they're for sure not checking, their emails all the time. Maybe phone calling is going to be more effective for them. You need to be able to operate wherever your persona is, and you need to do it throughout the channels to give yourself the best odds of success.
100%. Yeah, and no, I can relate to that, particularly with life sciences as a vertical, the pharmaceutical companies, medical device. Often these people, they're just not on LinkedIn, or they are, but it's a very bare bones account. Last activity was 4 months ago. So yeah, you need to use your brain.
Yeah, it's very and it's funny because it's really like the people on LinkedIn are those who are going to benefit from being on LinkedIn. Sales and marketing people, obviously, can network, they can do their jobs on LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn every single day. If you're a life sciences director of research and development, what are you going to get out of LinkedIn? That kind of thing.
So could you give from a tactical point of view, let's give some actionable stuff that people can take away from this. So get maybe an overview of your approach to prospecting. Obviously, we've distinguished between the research element and the actual doing, the outreach. Yeah, what more can you tell us there?
Sure. So, okay. I'll start a little broad and then we'll get super tactical. I kind of alluded to this earlier, but I think that especially as an SDR, like the role that I have now, it is really important to categorize your activities, your time. Categorize your time into two big buckets. One is building the list, and one is using the list, right? You can break that down into further categories of whatever you like, but building the list, using the list. Building the list, or as I'm used to calling it, prospecting, that's when you're and I'll use my current role as a specific example. That's where you're finding new individuals within a very narrow industry. Right now, I'm really focusing on the insurance industry in the US specifically, right? As opposed to my previous role at ZoomInfo, where I was selling to any business-to-business company in the world. My universe right now is much more limited. So I'm not spending my time finding companies, I'm spending my time finding contacts. And what that looks like is I'll block off my day. And it's ideally, I would have better statistics around what are the good call windows for my prospects. And I would plan my day accordingly, where if VPs of underwriting, which is the persona I'm reaching out to now, if they're typically the first person in the office and they usually start their workday at 7 a.m. in the morning or 8 a.m. in the morning, then I want to dedicate my mornings to calling, to being in front of them when I know that they're most available, right? But in my case, knowing that, or at least from the anecdotal information I have about VPs of underwriting, right now, I block off 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. in my mornings to finding prospects and adding new contacts. And that means going on LinkedIn, searching my CRM, going on the company's website, and then a lot of times using Google to look for specific titles and using Boolean searching on Google to find specific contacts. So tactically speaking, I try to block off time on my calendar into one of these two buckets, where I'm either building the list, right? And in my case, I'm blocking off 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. As I get better at this, I'm also going to add a specific goal to that time period. Right now, with my limited universe, I've been able to add 15, 20 contacts within a 2-hour time window. I don't know if that number is going to go up or down as I get more experience with this. But ideally, I want to say for the next 2 hours, I'm not just going to be adding names. I want to add this many names. I want to add this many companies. I want to be as specific and as targeted with my goal as I can. And then similarly, from noon to 2, that's my first big calling window where I'm hoping to make 50 dials, right? Again, specific block of time dedicated to a specific category of activities with a specific activity number I'm trying to hit within that time frame.
Yeah, I love it. And I like basing it on your activity. You're measuring what you can control. You may book X number of meetings from a calling session, but you don't know, right? Do you think as well that in terms of blocking time or assigning tasks to different parts of the day, another way to do it, obviously in an ideal world, we would base it purely around our prospects' world, their routine, their schedule, and so on. But also I know for myself, I'm more talkative. See, we're for the UK, we're recording this in the afternoon, so you may see this reflected in this episode, but I do better in the mornings. Like if I'm going to call, then for me, it's like mid to late morning, and I prefer to do admin tasks slightly more, just get my head down and whatever it may be in the afternoon. I feel like maybe socially or whatever it is, I slow down. Can you relate to that? Or do you think that that's a good approach?
That's a very astute observation, and it relates to a lot of the cold calling methodology we built at Vorsight. That was basically like figure out the best, learn the best tools, and then figure out how you can most effectively leverage them, right? So my energy also peaks in the morning. That's usually when I have, especially I've gotten into a good routine of working out in the mornings. I've learned that actually gives me energy. So similarly, I want to be making more calls in the morning. I want to, I'm also trying to balance that with aligning with my prospects sort of persona and their time windows during which they're more receptive. But whatever works for you, so long as you can be specific with your goals, number of activities, number of contacts, number of companies, be accountable, right? I know a lot of amazing SDRs who rely on their managers to help hold them accountable in as small of ways as being like, check in with me once a week or twice a week or something like that. And I know a lot of very independent SDRs that don't need that extra layer of accountability. But if you can be specific, if you can either keep yourself accountable or get somebody to help you with that, then you can align that with your energy levels and with your proven success. If you convert better in the afternoons, then I would say lean into that, right? Or in the mornings.
Awesome. Okay. Right. Let's get tactical here. So cold calls. You don't have to necessarily give your exact opener, but could you talk me through how you approach it? And maybe that's in flux at the moment, because I know you're in a new role, but maybe some good questions that you ask, things like that.
Sure. It's funny because it is a little bit in flux, but there's a lot of different sales methodologies in the world, and Vorsight was the only cold calling methodology I was ever exposed to. So it gave me an excellent frame. And for your knowledge, our business model was to be an outsourced sales company. So people would come to us with their product, and then we'd have to figure out a way to, pitch it, book meetings for them, sell it, right? For that reason, we needed to have a very dynamic methodology, whereby it's like, this isn't the script you're going to use every time on every persona. It's more like, first is the lead in, the first 15 seconds of a conversation, right? And again, my favorite sales books are psychology books. My favorite sales book is Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman. He kind of coined, him and his colleague kind of coined the field of behavioral economics with that book and some other works of theirs. And in it, they talk about how the brain operates in basically two systems. System one is an automatic, you're not really expending a lot of energy thinking about things actively. And system two is your pupils dilate and you're really working your brain, right? When you call somebody in the middle of their day, the beginning of their morning, at any point in time, when it's an unexpected phone call, odds are they're in system one. They're in automatic brain mode. They're reading an email. They're just getting their day started, right? We want them to be in the system two. We want their pupils to dilate so that they're paying more attention to what we're saying. We're actually cutting through the noise with it just by breaking them into system two. And in the first 15 seconds of a conversation, it's very important to sound comfortable, whatever your style is. My style at this point is sometimes too casual, but I lean into it because it works for me. Find your style, find your voice, find the way in which you're comfortable delivering yourself. Be comfortable, and as much as it's possible, try to say their name either with the correct pronunciation or with the correct version that they prefer. One of the things I always do is I go on LinkedIn. If I see that somebody's Michael Gold, for example, I go onto their LinkedIn page. If they have one, I jump into their recommendation section and I see if everybody calls them Mike. If they do, that's what I'm calling them when I'm calling them on the phone, right? Or if it's a name I'm not familiar with, I Google, how do you pronounce X name? And then it's not very difficult. I mean, for me, it's not very difficult, and I have fun with it. And I like learning names. So it's, if I can say your name the right way, the way that you like it within the first 15 seconds of a conversation, and I sound comfortable. And the other little hack I do is I say, hey, Mark, this is Rod Baptista over with Grading AI. How have you been? The how have you been hack is a little funny because it implies like, wait, like, what do you mean, how have I been? Should I have been any kind of way? Do we have some kind of prior relationship, right? Small things like that. That's just within the first 10 to 15 seconds of a conversation. And then it kind of builds from there. But the biggest piece after that is something that we used to call the common challenge. Most SDRs in the world right now are calling and pitching their solution. Hey, Mark, this is Rod Baptista at Grading AI. Do you have 2 seconds? Great. Let me tell you about my company. that approach is trash. Nobody cares. Nobody, I mean, it'll work, one time out of 1,000, but people don't care nearly as much about you as they do about themselves, right? So if you can, instead of leading the conversation with me, who I am, what my company does, how we can benefit you, whatever, lead with them. Like, hey, Mark, this is Rod Baptista over at Green AI. How have you been? Great. Just to be conscious for your time, I was doing some research. I know that you were, first of all, congrats on the recent transition to a Lego. I bet you that's very exciting. In speaking with other folks with your exact title, they're telling me that selling sales enablement solutions into the world of life sciences can be pretty tricky, especially when you're trying to find the right person. I'm curious, how are you tackling that, right? That's the kind of common challenge I would try to leverage. I'm like, hey, in speaking with your peers, that's client voice, that gives me credibility. Even though I'm delivering my thought, you hear it in the voice of your peers, right? Client voice in speaking with your peers, they're telling me that some kind of trend, some kind of challenge, some kind of goal that everybody within a given persona is trying to attain. And then you finish that with an open-ended question, right? That approach is surprisingly effective if you can deliver it well. Do a little bit of research, make yourself sound credible, ask a thought-provoking, compelling question is going to get you a lot better of a response from your prospect than being like, hey, let me tell you about what we do, right?
Yeah, it's interesting because so we take a very similar approach here, but I feel like what you're doing is a lot more succinct. You're just leading with, say, one challenge, one problem, and then going straight into it. So I guess really you're the opening part is 10, 15 seconds, maybe less, and then leading with the problem, the challenge, that is, I mean, what's that? That's going to be only about another 15 seconds as well, isn't it? 10, 15 seconds. So
varies. I think we clocked it in at like sometimes under 45 seconds to a minute to get to the full delivery of the common challenge, depending on pleasantries and such.
Okay. That's really interesting. Are there times where you might present 2, maybe even 3 challenges and then sort of, try to understand which of these is relevant? Are these relevant in your world?
Sure. So, real quick though, I would never articulate it. I would never cap off the common challenge with that kind of a question because it's close-ended. Sure. Are you seeing these? Opens the door for your prospect to say, nope.
I don't really. Yeah, of course.
And then you're left with nothing. But to your point, it is a very viable alternative. We used to call it like the ABC model or something like that. I forget the exact wording of it, where we're like, hey, in speaking with your peers, they're telling us that, I'm sorry, we used to call it the crawl, walk, run model. It's like in speaking with your peers, they're telling us that, they're either doing this, they're seeing that, or they're thinking about this. I'm kind of curious, like, what boat are you in? What stage are you at? Like, how are you guys seeing this, right? Open-ended question.
Mm-hmm. That's great. That's great. So, okay. So I'm thinking we're coming up on time soon. Mm-hmm. So we were going to dig into some other areas, but maybe we should spend the last several minutes just digging a bit deeper into this. What do you think, Rod?
Up to you. I'm happy to get tactical. I know that you wanted to talk more omni-channel stuff. Whatever you think would be valuable for your listening audience.
Sure. Well, so one of the things that you said to me before is the importance of leading with value, right? So I guess in my mind, if we're just looking at the sort of microcosm of the cold call that we're talking about, value could be simply the validation that you are hearing their peers talk about this thing. There's insight in that in and of itself. But that's very shallow, isn't it? That's very basic stuff. I mean, could you maybe expand on that a little bit more? Like, how do you bring and choose your, we are omni-channel here, right? So you choose your channel, whether it's phone calls, emails, LinkedIn outreach, like what does leading with value really mean to you?
That is an excellent question. I'm going to answer it a couple different ways. So firstly, on the omni-channel front, Find as many free gives as you can. At ZoomInfo, we were really good about screenshots, being like, hey man, I think you're selling into the automotive market in Georgia. Here's a couple of the VPs I found in some of the what I think is your target accounts. Here you go. Phone numbers and emails. Let me know if this is interesting to you. And if it's not, I'll get you something else. Right. Immediately for us, it was easy to be like, hey, like you're a salesperson, you need data. Here's some free data. That was an excellent value send. That was very easy to put into an email and into a LinkedIn message. LinkedIn is a little different because you ideally don't want to ask for something on LinkedIn until a couple of exchanges have happened. It's a social media platform and it hits different. People are really turned off when they connect with you or something. And then the very first thing you say is like, hey man, thanks for connecting. Like, can I ask you for something? You're like, ugh, like this again. Okay. Like it really turns them off. Right. So you need to, as a social media platform, you need to be a little more social for that. That's LinkedIn. For email, you don't ever want to send an email without an ask. I have known people that have a lot of success sending value emails with no ask, with no call to action, with no like, hey, let's talk, or like, you know, give me a call or something, or like, here's a link to my calendar, like, let's book some time. That it is a viable approach. It is not my philosophy. Always want to have an ask every single time. And then in terms of leading with value, generally speaking, one of the things I don't think enough SDRs realize is that in our role, we speak to more, I will talk to more VPs of underwriting in a given day than VPs of underwriting will, generally speaking, right? If I do a good job of listening, paying attention to what they're saying, and if I, in the process of asking these thought-provoking common challenge questions, even if I don't get a meeting, I have a good shot of getting information, insight. Even if somebody tells me like, that's not the challenge that we're seeing, here is the challenge that we're seeing, or here's what I'll ask them, like, if that doesn't resonate with you, like what does, right? Anytime I get that valuable, juicy, timely insight, I can share that. I can say, hey, you know, in speaking with, in the beginning, when you say in speaking with your peers, like maybe you haven't really been doing that so much and it's just kind of a line, but later on you can say, it's funny you say that. I was just talking to John over at Mass Mutual and he was telling me this, and that. And he told me that they were thinking about doing this. Yeah. That is immensely valuable. And I don't think that value add of being able to share the experience and the challenges of the peers of the personas we're reaching out to, we are in a unique position to be able to capture and deliver that. I think that's a big value add that the SDRs could be more explicitly conscious of.
That's brilliant. I can hear the passion in your voice rise a little bit there when you're talking about that. I don't know if there's some prior experience there that you're thinking about, but no, that's just really interesting. Rod, one of the things you said about emails, always have an ask. What about you know, if you're, say, a few touches into a sequence of some kind, you just can't get the person, and would you share whatever it is, some piece of content or something on an email without an ask there, or would you still have it every single time?
Different schools of thought. This is one of those like what's the word for it, like I forget the exact expression of this phrase, but it's basically like how you say things is more important than what you say. At the end of the day, your confidence, comfort level, and credibility is going to carry you much further than your technical expertise, especially as an SDR, at least, right? And probably generally in a whole lot of other things. So what that means is whatever works for you, lean into it and try to maximize your advantages while accounting for your maybe some of the areas where you're weakest, right? So in my philosophy, I've had really good success always having an ask. Even if I'm 7, 8, 9 touches into an email sequence, which, by the way, I often reply to my own emails that I've sent out. That's a really good tactic. And then eventually you get a subject line that's like 6 or 8 you know, like every time you reply, it says RE colon, right? Eventually the people look at that and they're like, oh, like, you know, that's too many reads. I got to respond to this.
Yeah.
Every single time I reply to my own email or whatever, I have a very simple ask of like, are you free on Tuesday? Or, you know, would you be interested in talking about this? Right? Something really simple. But I think SDRs do themselves a disservice by giving without asking. You want to give freely, but you always want to try to slide a little ask in there. Again, this is also my philosophy. This is what I've had success with. I've seen a lot of people have success giving freely with no ask, and then eventually having those people come back to them. So really, it's whatever works for you.
Good. Okay. We're at time. So I think we should talk about doing a part 2 because there's so much more we can discuss here. But yeah, we can do that.
Happy to do that.
Yeah. Cool. Okay. Thanks, Rod. No, that's brilliant. So yeah, in closing, is there anything that you would like to share? Where can people connect with you? Anything you're working on that you want to shout about?
Yeah, connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm getting back into the. I just got back from Portland last week. I went to a conference, so it's interesting. Even that level of omni-channel of, you know, in-person meeting people is a viable strategy. You know, I'm often reminded that still gets a lot of business. I've been doing a lot of that recently. Connect with me on LinkedIn. I try to share as good of content as I come across. And I guess in general, my closing remarks are that find what works for you. Find the people that are closest to you, and style. That's my closing remark. That's the expression. Style trumps substance. That's what I would love. That's what I would love for your listeners to come out of here thinking about.
Interesting. Yeah. Style trumps substance. I'm literally writing that down. Okay. Very cool. Okay. Thanks, Rod. Look, really enjoyed this. As I say, we should definitely chat about a part 2, but yeah, we'll take that off there. All right. Thanks, everyone. Cheers.
Thanks, Mark. Take care.